All right, so we are going to do a review now on Mob Psycho 100. This was an anime that I passed. It's back from the summer of 2016. It ran from July 11th through September 27th. And Mob Psycho, for those of you who don't know, is produced by the same guy who made One Punch Man.
Can I read the 5-star review real quick first?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Chocobo Pie writes, and if you want to write us a 5-star review, you will help us ensure that we are forever the most reviewed anime podcast in the world. So please head over to iTunes and write us a review if you haven't done it yet. Just take you a second. We'll read it on the podcast if it's 5 stars, and we will love you forever. For real. Chocobo Pie writes, it's a cute name, I have a confession. I don't know how many years I've been subscribed to this podcast. It was when Cram was a host, and I probably should have written a 6-star review a long time ago. The length is fantastic. I'm a photo editor in a severely silent office where headphones and podcasts are the only things that keep me sane while I'm working. The 2-hour length is way better than a shorter podcast with less content. The topics, content, and hosts are great too. Hi, guys.
Hi.
What's up? How you doing? Okay, thank you for writing. Thank you for that review. And I hope you're bouncing in your seat now in your severely quiet office because we read your 5-star review.
All right.
And if you're not bouncing in your seat, now would be the time to do that.
Start bouncing. So, anyways, One Punch Man. Yes. This was back from the summer.
No, Mob Psycho.
Thank you.
It's just basically the same thing as One Punch Man.
Well, it's written by One. That's the name of the manga artist. And he was the one who created the webcomic One Punch Man. And he also created the manga Mob Psycho 100. This was published by Shogakukan. It is another in Yura Sunday magazine. It is another shonen manga. This one actually started back in 2012 and is still being created by One, and it has 13 volumes. So the anime adaptation of this manga was produced by Studio Bones, and it has...
I feel like it's going to be going for a while.
The anime itself?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, it's gonna get another season. I wouldn't be surprised if multiple extra seasons.
Given the popularity of One Punch Man and how hot like One's stories are, I wouldn't be shocked if it.
Well, plus the ending is totally open.
The ending is open, but it didn't feel unsatisfying to me.
No, I wouldn't say that, but they made it pretty clear that there will be more. And I think this show was very popular, and I think that it's because it's basically a shonen anime. I think that at least it has the feel of one, depending on how you want to classify it. I think that it's definitely going to get more. I don't know that they've announced another season, but they will be having another one. I would bet money on it.
I wouldn't be surprised either way, I think is where I stand on this. Like, I could see them basically being like, we had an anime, it was really good, it's going to help drive sales to the manga that will probably continue for a long time. And, you know, that's what we wanted it for. Like, it was a good representation, a good installment in the franchise, and now we're good. Or, to your point, I could see them, you know, continuing on with this.
I will say that I don't care for the manga artist's name.
One.
I think it's insanely pretentious that he doesn't have a name. He's just the one. Doesn't that seem? And that goes for anybody who does that. Like, you know, you take your name and you're no longer whatever. I'm just being an ass.
So this was
as you do.
As you do. So this was directed by Yuzuru Tachikawa. And what I think is interesting about this guy is that he really doesn't have very many directorial credits to his name. He directed something called Arata Naru Sekai, World Start, Load, End. The only other thing that he worked on as a director that I can see, he worked as a director for Death Parade and Death Billiards. And I think Death Parade is probably his highest.
Death Billiards.
Yeah. Probably his
Billiards. Yeah, Death Parade was really not I don't know about well acclaimed, but definitely well received.
It was a good show.
Oh yeah,
So-
I loved it.
So it almost kind of seems like this guy, you know, started with a small project, got a medium-sized project, did really well with it, and now, you know, he got Mob Psycho as what I think could be argued his high-profile project. yeah. So otherwise, this is a fun show. 12 episodes.
I love the art style in this anime.
I can definitely agree with you
it's
there.
very like I was watching this with a friend of mine, and he commented about how it looks crappy, and I was like it's intended to look like this.
It's stylized.
It's very stylized, and it's drawn in such a way that it doesn't look like too many other anime, but without looking too weird. Like some people didn't like Ping Pong the animation because it looked a little too rough.
Yeah, it's not obnoxious.
But this is not like that. It's stylized enough that you can tell, like, oh, whenever the same artists do another anime, I'm going to be able to say, oh, that's definitely the same people that did Mob Psycho.
Yeah.
But I don't look at Mob Psycho and think, oh, this looks terrible. It just has that uniqueness to it. And I appreciated that about it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the things that's going to strike anyone the moment that they start this show. And it is kind of a fantastic thing. The characters don't look alike. This isn't one of those cases where you're like, all the characters have the same face. Though I will say Mob's face and Saitama's face is almost identical.
It really is.
I will say that much.
Well, that's funny because they're practically the same character.
They're practically the same character, and they have practically the same face.
Neither of them talk, hardly ever. Both of them are completely emotionless for the most part. Both of them are insanely overpowered and can defeat anybody without effort.
Yeah.
Both of them have the same shaped head, except one of them is bald and one of them is not.
Maybe it's like a prequel before Saitama lost his hair. Maybe Saitama's backstory in One Punch Man was a lie, and he
forgot.
Oh yeah, his psychic
there was
powers turned in on himself and he forgot. So let's talk about the plot. So the story follows Shigeo Kageyama, who is nicknamed Mob. Mobu. And the reason why his nickname is Mob is because Mob means background character. Like it's so which I actually think fits kind of his personality because he really doesn't care and really doesn't want to be the hero.
If it weren't for the crazy amount of power that he has, which he kind of doesn't even really consider too much in his life, like it's not the main focal point for him either from a mental standpoint, he kind of would be a Mobu.
Yeah.
He's also dumb as rocks. I can say that.
That too. So while he has very little aspiration and no interest in, achieving much and would fade into the background, he cannot fade into the background because he is actually a very powerful esper or psychic, however you want to word that.
Haruhi Suzumiya is looking for him.
Yeah, Haruhi Suzumiya is on the hunt for this kid. He is the one that she has been waiting for. He is the chosen one. And Mob's psychic powers are not all fantastic and fun because he has an instance where he realizes as he's, getting older that his psychic powers continue to get more dangerous. And it's basically called Mob Psycho 100 because when he reaches that 100% like emotion,
he's a rageaholic.
Drive, rage, anger, that's when that sort of like emotional withdrawal snaps off. And he goes psycho.
It's basically like the actual physical, like psychic power version of an emotional outburst. Like when you just keep all of your emotions in and you don't really think about them and you're indifferent in life and everything, and then suddenly everything crashes down on you and you just have an emotional breakdown. Only his has psychic repercussions.
He's that really quiet guy in the office that comes in one day with like an AK-47 and mows down everybody. Have you ever heard of like an office shooting?
Yeah, someone goes postal.
That's Mob. He just takes all the shit until he can't take it anymore, and you'll never know when it's gonna happen. But there's a rage boiling underneath, and the show represents his rage in like this percentage counter. So something will happen, and it'll show his rage going from like 20% to 25%, and that's how, as the viewer, you keep track of how close he is to having like his shit go crazy. And it takes 3 to 4 episodes per instance of that, but it's kind of interesting to anticipate how close he's getting.
Can I just say that I actually really appreciate the fact that they didn't take the entire season to get him to 100. I was expecting when I first started watching it that it was going to be one of those, you see him get close, but you never see him get to 100 till the season finale.
Yeah.
But you're like,
I thought that too. I really did.
Yeah. And then to see it happen, I think it either happens in the third or the fourth episode, the first time you get to see something that brings him to that 100%. And I was like, oh, okay. So then we're going to get more than just that as the pinnacle.
He's like Gohan.
I can see that.
Gohan like just loses his shit.
I can see that comparison. Yeah.
Gohan's way cooler than Mob, but well, I should say like Teen Gohan is cooler. Dragon Ball Super Gohan is insanely lame. You can just tell Akira Toriyama hates the crap out of Gohan.
So Mob ends up to try to control his powers. Mob ends up studying, air quotes, under this guy called Arataka Regan. And basically
the traveling salesman.
Yeah.
Basically
snake oil guy. And so he is a self-proclaimed psychic who has his own like spirit business or whatever. And it's literally called the Talk About Spirits Agency. And he, when Mob comes in for the first time, he kind of doesn't take Mob seriously, but then realizes that Mob actually has psychic powers because he kind of actually doesn't.
Yup.
And Mob never finds this out. But
poor Babu. Like he really, that kid is being taken advantage of hard.
You know, that's the thing though, is like at the beginning of the show, you're like, damn, Regan, like you're taking advantage of this kid left and right, but more toward the end, like you realize that they both kind of have this really nice relationship with each other, where they both start to and I know Kimiko, I know you didn't finish the whole thing.
Nah, and for the record, guys, I only saw the first 6 episodes, so I'm not going to even rate it probably by the end of it because I don't feel like that's fair. But from what I did see, you're right, Chiaki. There were definitely aspects where I felt like, yeah, he was taking advantage of this kid. He's definitely not the moral high ground, but he also treats Mob like there's a relationship they have there that is cordial, and you can tell that Regan cares about him to a degree. And I don't know if that gets better later.
It's only cordial because Mob is so dumb.
Mob is real
He's
dumb.
dumb as shit.
But you can tell.
But it looks like there's genuine,
I was gonna say, I think Regan really actually cares about Mob, and I think what makes Regan such a sympathetic character for me, and the reason why I stopped kind of being like, you're just an asshole who's taking advantage of this dumb sweet child, is that I think Regan is one of the few people who really kind of listens to Mob and what Mob is saying about the fact that he just wants to kind of live a normal life and learn how to get his powers in check. And I feel like Regan is one of the few people. Now, granted, he's still like, yeah, okay, get your power in check, but please still help me out with things. But like, I feel like he's one of the few people who looks at Mob and is like, you know, okay, here's this kid, he's trying to live a normal life. Yes, you can live a normal life, Mob. Because he says at multiple points throughout the series how, like, psychic powers are like anything else that people have. It's like people who are really smart or really good at singing or fast at running or have unusually bad body odor, to quote him. It's just a part of you, and, like, you can live a normal life as much as anyone else can with
you
their
just have
own
to
quirks.
figure out. Yeah.
What a load of BS that is, though. I mean, you could study more and be good at academics. You could get a trainer and work really hard to be a better athlete. But in reality, you're probably not going to magically develop psychic powers.
Actually,
there's a difference.
From that perspective, in Devil's Advocate, which I still agree with you that I appreciate that he's trying to help Mob, but it kind of reminds me of a scene from X-Men, where I think it was X-Men 2 with the cure, the antidote is going around, and Rogue is like, there's a cure, like, how do we get it? I need one. And Storm is like, you don't need one. There's nothing wrong with you. And we look at that from the perspective of Storm has an amazing ability and she can, do incredible things with it. Rogue kills people when she touches them. So, like, sure, there's nothing wrong with you. You can live a normal life, blah, 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 wear gloves, but, like, she would still probably rather not.
Elsa might have something to say about that.
Exactly. She still might rather not, like, touch somebody and kill them if there is an ability to make it go away. So I think from Mob's perspective, it's like, yeah, you could have body odor and wear deodorant, but I also would still really rather not have
risk
this
killing people.
Exactly.
When I get to 100. Yeah, I mean, I think I actually think one of my favorite parts of the show was the dynamic between Mob and Regan. Like, I really do.
My favorite aspect of the show was the fighting between the two, but between the delinquents, because I love anime that have like high school delinquents in them. I love watching like dudes with pompadours fight each other, like, you know, like when he's like Shonen Junai Gumi, and that was my favorite part of the show, and it's a big part because. And it's a big part of both the action and the comedy in this anime because Mob gets roped into participating in these like gang wars.
Yeah.
He doesn't really understand that he's being used because he's so dumb. But, you know, like the bodybuilding club, it gets involved and these huge jack dudes who can like just like flick a dude and, you know, make them spin off into the sky or whatever because they're so jacked. And then you have like... delinquent gangs from different high schools or middle schools or whatever they are fighting it out, and which leads Mob to run into the only other person he's ever met that has psychic powers other than him, which is probably
Teruki Hanazawa,
the blonde guy, which is probably the most action that occurs in this anime, like within the span of 2 episodes, and it just goes on and on. And a lot of the characters in this anime are delinquents. Like probably half of them are either the bodybuilding guys or the delinquents from either school. And it's a huge part of the story.
Well, and that's one thing. Just kind of two other quick characters to mention. We mentioned Teruki Hanazawa, who is that delinquent who also has psychic powers. And then the other 2 notable characters, one of them, his name is Dimple, and he's a green floating spirit that Mob ends up owning, and then Dimple follows around and has questionable intentions, but...
He puts the whoop on him.
Yeah.
Questionable intentions?
Well, because so at first Dimple was like, I'm going to follow Mob around to take over the world, and then like...
Oh, but then he just kind of like became a little side pet.
Yeah, kind of.
He's so useless and weak, he can't do anything anyway.
Dimple.
And then Mob has a younger brother, Ritsu Kageyama, who, of course, doesn't have psychic powers, but then that kind of becomes an arc later. So if I had to kind of break this story down, I would say there's sort of 4 arcs. The first 3 are all small, and that's meeting Mob and Regan. And then that leads into kind of what they do, which is how we meet Dimple. And then there's the kind of SALT middle school whatever arc that is how we meet Teruki Hanazawa. And then all of that kind of funnels into what I would say is kind of the second half of the series and the main dominant arc, which is Ritsu's arc, where Dimple kind of ends up giving psychic powers to Ritsu and awakening some psychic powers in him. And then that goes on and we meet this organization called the Claw organization or whatnot. And I like, unless we're going to play the spoiler drop, I don't really feel compelled to go that far into spoilers because the show is actually really good and you don't really need the spoil. Like, I don't have that much to say.
And also, the plot line of the show's not that intense.
Yeah, no, so it's not. We could spoil it. And
I mean, it's not like we need to talk about specific details of the plot to keep forwarding the conversation because most of it is people just fighting each other. And yeah, but the delinquents are sort of a theme that kind of flows throughout the anime.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that you were getting on was the action in those scenes when we start to get to the delinquents and whatnot. And I have to say, I really liked the action in this show. In the animation style, like I thought the action was well stylized and well animated. Like it moved well.
I thought that the action in the show was good, but I thought that it suffered from the same thing that One Punch Man suffered from, which maybe isn't that shocking because it's the same creator. But that is that Mob's going to win every fight.
Character armor.
And he's so powerful that there maybe is... I don't even know if there's one instance in the show where I expected him to lose. And so, like, even when he's fighting the other powerful delinquent, I mean, he basically beats him without even fighting back. And it doesn't build much tension in the fight scenes, I'll say that. When, I mean, like, there's a scene in the beginning where Mob and Regan go into this tunnel in like of a road where apparently a bunch of people died in the tunnel and it's haunted and there's a powerful spirit in there that has been killing people, and they build it up quite a bit for about 10 minutes of that episode. and you go in and you see this monster and it's huge, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like this huge like alien looking beast thing, and you're thinking, wow, it's going down, this is badass. And then Mob just kills it, and like he just flicks it and it dies. And I'm thinking, I really would have rather have had like a 5-minute fight scene that's really cool, but no, Mob just kind of goes in and flicks it and kills it. And so like I know that that's part of the story, that Mob is super powerful and all that, but I'd rather actually watch like a fight scene than have the assumption that Mob's just going to beat them without question.
And I can see it going both ways. Like, I feel like that's a bit of the shtick of this anime, is how, you know, Mob is, and again, he's that Saitama character. He's that character who's overpowered, no one can beat him, and all he wants to do is learn how to live without his psychic powers, join the workout club, be able to run 5 kilometers, get some muscles, and get the girl. Like I feel like that's the whole point of his character and his arc, is that there's all these fantastic things, and he's like, yeah, okay, I guess
I just want a normal life.
Yeah. But I also think it can be a tactic too, to save on animation and money, where you do have some of those fights that are a little like walk up, flick guy dies, and then you have better fight scenes, like when he does meet Hanazawa. Am I saying that right? Hanazawa?
Yeah, but I didn't even think the Hanazawa fight was that good, because you know that he can't beat Mob.
Well,
I mean,
okay,
he loses from the first second. He's nowhere near. Mob just sits there and takes everything, and the blonde guy can't even touch him.
But I think the point of tension for Mob is he going to kind of learn how to control his psychic powers more and whatnot. But I think that's the formula that the creator is working from, and it's that overpowered superhero trope, but then flipping it on the side of overpowered superhero doesn't care about being an overpowered superhero,
And is also real dumb.
Like,
I think a lot of the crux of this show goes past the fighting, though. I think a lot of it is trying to improve yourself. Like, Mob is constantly struggling with the fact that he's going to hurt people.
Yeah.
And there's the scene, like when he goes psycho for the second time, I think, in the anime, he realizes that he hasn't changed a damn bit since he was younger, since the first time he hurt people. And so and then like his brother wants to be a better person, and he's jealous because he doesn't have powers, and it's just it goes on and on. Like, every character seemingly has something about them, you know, right down to Mob is like this weak physically weak kid. So even though he's powerful psychically, he wants to be stronger physically. So he works out with like the jack dudes, even though he's terrible at working out. And so there is a theme in this anime of like personal improvement.
yeah.
So, I mean, that is also definitely a theme. But I don't appreciate it when you go through a large chunk of an episode anticipating a fight that's going to happen, and then there really isn't a fight. You know, like, I get that that most of the action comes later in the show, like in the last few episodes. But, you know, I still want more from, you know, the rest of the anime as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel the same way, but
I mean, it is what it is. Like I get what you're saying, but I think this kind of boils down to, yeah, in a way, is there only so many props I can give something when it's, you know, about a foot deep. There's about a foot of depth in plot and character, and I would even say there's more depth in character arc, because I think Mob there is some interesting things with this character, and again, specifically with relationship to Regan and whatnot, but there's not a ton of growth in this series. There's not a ton of character development. I mean, Mob has a couple things that he learns along the way. Same with the other characters. They have a few token lessons, but fundamentally, at the end of the show, the person who Regan is at the start of the show is fundamentally the same guy we see at the end. The same with Mob. The same with Hanazawa, other than, you know, he has a different approach to his powers and a different, you know, respect for whatnot. But
there may be more growth later, because it's painfully obvious that there's going to be more.
Yeah.
I mean, the anime ends with a conversation between two bad guys talking about future plans. I mean, it's about as open-ended as it can possibly be. So you may find that in the second or third season of this, that there's more growth.
Yeah, and I would say again, like I think there were moments of growth here. Like I said, but I think they come across to me more as lessons learned and less of actual character growth. Again, the distinction I'm making from that is Mob fundamentally the same character at the end of the show that we saw at the beginning of the show? And fundamentally, yes,
I would say so.
Like, I mean, he's learned a couple things along the way. He's starting to make steps toward not relying on his powers as much or whatnot. But fundamentally, he's the same character. He's that still kind of lovable idiot who is overpowered and whatever.
The character that grows the most is Mob's brother. He's the one that has the huge awakening.
I would either say him or Dimple, actually.
Dimple.
Yeah. But here's the thing. For what this show is, for what this show set out to do, it's another instance of the creator doing a really good job of delivering on it. And I'm going to give this show credit where credit is due. And I have I have a hard time knocking off too many points here and there because, this is the animation. I thought the style was refreshing and different. I thought the animation itself, how it moved, was really well done.
It was well animated.
I thought the music, while limited, was fitting to the tone.
I can't remember too much of the music, but I hated the opening. It was awful.
Well, I think that
counting from 0 to 100 is not good. I lost my mind.
And then I would agree that the music was kind of the weakest part of it. It fit, but it was the weakest part.
I think music is normally the least important thing though in anime, but that's personal taste.
As long as it's not glaringly bad, I would agree.
It needs to have music, but it's not a crisis if it doesn't have.
I mean, the plot, while not deep, was amusing and did turn some genre conventions around, as we kind of have come to expect from the creator. And the characters did some interesting things. So it was overall, I'm at the point of being ready to score it.
I think so too. And it has really great. The characters are the strongest aspect of the show, for sure.
Handedly.
I mean, by far. So between Dimple, who's a good character, and Mob, I guess, is a good character, and all of the delinquents are good, and the bodybuilder guys are funny, and pretty much all the characters are at least fairly memorable, and I'm sure that we'll be covering the sequel of this because I want to see what kind of other things they get up to.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how long they can sustain because this was only a 12-episode show. And so if we do get more content, how long will they be able to kind of sustain this dynamic?
One quick problem I had, and maybe you won't agree with this, but I thought the climax of the show happened too early. I thought the climax of the show was the fight between Mob and the blonde guy, whatever the hell his name was. When Mob,
I disagree.
When he goes psycho, I feel like that's the highest point of excitement in the anime.
I disagree.
So what do you think was the highest point of excitement?
I think it was the ending. I think it was the actual climax because that was the end of Ditsu's arc. And I think that was kind of the main story that was being told here. That's why we had in the beginning, we had the first four or five episodes being almost 3 sub arcs that led into that one main arc that was the rest of the series.
Suit yourself.
I will. I do. All right, you go first. Or do you want me to go first? I don't either.
I like the anime. I thought it was quite good. It went fast for me. It didn't fall asleep through every episode, like sometimes happens with me. And I genuinely enjoyed watching this show. I pretty much knew that was going to be the case the minute that I knew that there were lots of delinquents in it. So I think that the anime is sort of held back by the pacing early on, for me at least. And I think it definitely has things about it that are less than stellar, but I think that if I gave the anime less than a 4 easily crushed evil spirits out of 5, it would be unfair to it. So I think a 4.5 type of range is about right. So I'll just stick with a 4.
And now please allow me to shock everyone listening. 5 interesting anime styles out of 5.
What?
Wow.
Really?
Really?
Wow, that is, hold on a second. Oh, apparently my tablet is muted. Okay. Forget that.
All right.
Wow, 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Nothing was inadequate.
I think it set out with a goal. It accomplished that goal, and from completely objective standards, it also ticked enough boxes to merit.
Okay, so we'll give it a 4.5 then.
Yeah.
Okay.
4.5.
Sweet.
Moving on. What do we? Okay, well, it has pretty big standards to live up to when that second season comes out, because I know it's coming. For
Well,
sure.
yeah. I mean,
Well, we'll see what happens then.
I will say this show is definitely not for everyone. And like, if you loved One Punch Man, you're gonna love it. If you didn't, then you're probably gonna hate it.
My friend who was watching it was very bored. He fell asleep quickly, and he is a young guy, so he probably would have enjoyed it, but I don't think he really understood what the hell was going on because he came in like on episode 6.
Yeah.
But anyway,